Okay, so welcome to our 2025 Collaborative Community Conservation Meeting. We're still workshopping the name, it's a mouthful, but we're just so happy that you're here. And like us, you may be feeling a little bit unsettled about the outlook for conservation. That said, we feel encouraged that you're here because now more than ever, we will have to think outside of the box, collaborate and continue community-led conservation. I, for one, wholeheartedly believe Polk County does that. Thank you. I hope that you leave the meeting here today with maybe some sparks of new ideas. And conversations and maybe even developing some partnerships for future projects together. Go to the next slide. Okay, so some housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, so I will send out links to the recording for you to share with any colleagues or friends. If you don't mind checking that your phone is on silent, folks on Zoom, please mute yourself. And then we are going to have a dedicated time at the end for questions. We'll have a break, but if at any point you feel like you need to stand up and stretch or get a drink or the bathroom, please feel free. Next slide. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting today is to build and expand partnerships, evaluate natural resource concerns, and collaboratively prioritize and improve identified natural resource concerns for Polk County. Just a quick audio check. Can you hear me in the back? Good. Okay, awesome. Okay, so who we are. This meeting is in partnership with NRCS. So we'll do some quick introductions. I'm Morgan Neal, the outreach coordinator for Polk SWCD.
I'm Kevin Porter, the district manager for Polk Water Conservation District.
I'm Haley, I'm the admin assistant for Polk SWCD.
Mark Lynn, Polk Conservation, the all things wildlife habitat person against.
Thank you. And we do have some directors present. Director Emeritus.
Thank
you.
Prior internet director is on one.
That chapel and large here in Polk County too.
Mike Wilson, director for Zone 5. I'd like to find out a few acres over Polk City Library for
Ian Olson, director of Zone 3, which is where we are right now. I've got a farm just down there. And for your reference, there's a map over there if you're interested in kind of associating yourself with the zones. And how about the NRCS Polk? I'm going to go on
Brandon Steiner, the Laurel Women North Coast State Forestry. Being living on the Polk County worker.
I'm crying, I'm so sorry. Okay, and now let's do some individual introductions, if you don't mind saying your name, your title or affiliation, or your operation name, and maybe location. Let's start with, we're gonna come back to our panel.
Hi, I'm Olivia Doctor, I'm a regional water quality specialist for Florida Department of Agriculture, Ag, Water Quality.
Pam?
Pam Dalton, I am property owner in the PD area.
I'm working Kate, I'm the Farmland Program Director for Oregon Agricultural Trust. I'm one of 4 land protection staff at OAT, and we are based in Salem, and and I work on the west side of the state and mostly the Willamette Valley and local Wasco and the river.
For me, I have speak water, and I've lived in there 40 years. Most of the time I was working over 3 years back. I've now been back for about 5 or 6 years, and we're covering the category limited. The main potential area on top of the district. So,
Thank you.
Terry Landers, I'm the current president of the Marion Polk chapter of the Oregon Small Business Association. Our timber property is right out that way, less than a mile from here. And we're becoming fairly well known for finding redwoods, coast redwoods. That experiment goes back 37 years. Last year we had 5 different tours on our property, showcasing the coast redwoods. I'd like to point out something. Pam and Jock Dalton, 2 months. They are the World Tree Farmers of the Year for 2024, the entire city.
Freeholders, underwriters, gravitated towards agriculture, Oregon wine press, capital press, and California based people called, Atlanta, the Western. I really like the extension, and livestock forces for willing to.
Hi everyone, my name is Teresa Brady, I'm the District Conservationist for Marion County with we own so. Hi, I'm Valerie.
We just bought 10 acres.
I'm sorry, president over the Dallas.
And here,
I'm a new farmer out in Dallas, Oregon, and I'm trying to do habitat restoration. I'm George Kaufman, I'm a company advisor here at Agriculture, as well as one of the small data nursery.
I'm going to do a visit, rather than coordinator for the mobile urban clusters, we're going to be together and have a incubator here in the
Everyone, I'm David County, I'm the Director of Environmental Science Professor here. Department of Super University.
Hi, my name is Pete Stinson. I'm also at Root in your environmental science.
I'm doing for the little
There's still the rest of my life in this private.
Eleanor Pinion, Habitat Conservation Specialist with Presence Forever. I help NRCS manage conservation units throughout the Northwest portion of Oregon, including.
Marissa Tev, I'm a resource soil scientist. I cover 9 counties. And let's put you on the spot.
Oh, right, my name is Tom, and I used to be, one of the very.
Thank you. And how about the folks on Zoom?
Deborah Landforce, 2 Fox Farm near Rickreel. Glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm Jeffrey Johnson with the City of Salem, Natural Resources Planner.
I'm Gabby Domingue. I'm doing some environmental education and outreach for the cities of Dallas, Monmouth, and Falls City.
I'm John Clark. I'm a stewardship forester for the Oregon Department of Forestry here in Dallas.
Great, thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it over to Evelyn for just a moment. So if you're not familiar with NRCS, she has her elevator speech prepared for you. Whatever you'd like. Hi, glad you could all make it today. It's raining, so I'm just to be able to work in the field and get a break. So, if you're not familiar with NRCS, we work with private landowners on ag land, and we provide a variety of programs based on what is offered in the Farm Bill that is passed by Congress. We are currently in holding pattern on a new Farm Bill, so lots going on in Washington right now. So we haven't seen what that's going to look like yet, and we work on every land use and deal with or help landowners to resolve any kind of resource concerns that they might have on their property that we have funding for, including erosion, water quality, invasive species. We do a lot of work on forest claims, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We've got a lot of old restoration, we do irrigation, have storage water, and some high tunnels and organic transition. So quite a variety of things. And we actually are bringing government in here now. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate being here. First, I'm the district manager of the district, and we're really represented by our 7-member board, publicly elected directors. So you'll see your SWCD directors on your ballot. You may always wonder, what is this? Well, most of them are here today. So make sure you say hello. So have a great staff. We're here to be non-regulatory general natural resource assistance. We know that people are going to farm, they're going to log. We want to try to do that in the best way that we possibly can. We're not legal enforcement, we're just assistance from the funds. Much of our money that we have direct access to comes from Oregon lottery dollars through an agency called OVA. We apply for assistance grants. We work closely with OSU Extension, ODO and ODO, watershed councils, county governments, and other agencies and groups like the Small Woodlands Association that's here to spread the word. It's one of our biggest things that we can do is just form groups like this and get that message out. Our goal is to meet people where they are, understand their needs, and provide them honest assistance and be there for them with that quality service. And our mission that the board we've passed is to conserve and enhance the quality, quantity of soils, water, wildlife, habitat, and Polk.
Oh, okay. So quickly, I just want to go through a bit of a recap for last year. We kind of redid the meeting format a little bit last year in the past, and we had some really great small group discussions. Just to kind of quickly hit on some of the things we did. We put out a community survey, decent response to, and we presented that, for the small groups kind of looked at. One of the first things we asked for those small groups was to identify what was really missing on the survey. And the kind of, all the groups kind of came up with these same things. Across all the groups, one of the first things that they pointed out that we missed was pollinators. We didn't really have any questions on concerns about pollinators. The other concern was access to information and sharing information. We didn't really ask what people's were on that. Challenges that those small groups identified, again, a source of that consolidated information. Where can I go to find what I'm looking for in one place that's not scattered? Breaking down barriers between all of us, between agencies, between groups, getting people in the same room and talking. The economic reality of conservation, like we all know it's expensive these days, the money only goes so far. Huge challenge that we have to face. And communications. So as much as we can leverage what the district can do, what everybody can do with communications. Solutions that were proposed, cross training across, agencies, districts, staff everywhere. So we kind of understand as much as we can what other people do. So if we do get people to walk in the door and ask questions, we can answer those questions and point people in the right direction. Develop a hub for that information. Host workshops, tours, demonstrations, get people out on the ground, get them involved, get their hands in conservation. And of course, find more funding. We'd all love to do. It's a challenge, especially right now. We acknowledge that it's tough. There's a lot of things that have gone on, and especially just in Oregon last year, we're going to take a lot of conservation money to recover from fires. We don't begrudge anybody any of that, but that's just kind of the reality of what we do.
So we took that survey information and feedback, and I put together a vision board for what we wanted to focus on for 2024. In that survey, 2 of the top 3 types of assistance that people asked for were educational workshops and tours. We did a lot of that, and the 2 biggest areas of interest for people were pollinators and invasive species. So cultivating is our newsletter that we do in partnership with OSU Extension. It comes out quarterly, and we really increased our circulation. We went from about 3,000 homes to 8,500 rural homes in Polk County. So there are some copies in the back of that. We encourage you to take one. For some reason, it's not arriving to your mailbox. And we can always add you to our mailing list if you'd like to receive it at that too. So with ag water quality, I worked with Beth to put together a couple of brochures that she could hand out, or we could hand out to the landowners while on site visits. We worked on our webpage for the ag water quality program, and she is embarking on the Focused Ag Solutions program. So there's Olivia might touch on that a little bit, you know, if it's still very much in the early stages, we're kind of building that ship while we're riding it. So if you're interested in learning more about it, please talk to Beth, or Derek is involved in that too, and Olivia. Next slide. So Beth was also involved in a small grant for heavy use area with a landowner. So you can see creating a much better place for the horses, getting them out of the mud. We did a few farm tours, one at Eden's Farm, Lucky Crow, at Pryor's Farm, and then we also did a hazelnut cover crop collaboration with Teresa and Marion County. Next slide. We also worked with volunteers and NRCS folks to get out and plant some native trees and shrubs along Upper Rickreall Creek. We also had volunteer days in Grand Ronde at their native plant nursery. We had a pollinators and plants workshop where we went to Cornerstone, and we had two PhD candidates, one from OSU and one from oh, that's right. Sorry, I'm missing a logo there. We also had someone from the University of Oregon, and we worked with the Greater Yamhill Watershed Council to talk about native plantings and oak habitat. And we got very involved with the Mid-Willamette CWMA in 2024. Polk County hosted the field days. We went to 4 locations. Maybe 3, Cornerstone, Noble Oaks, and Basket Slough hosted us as well. And so we have been working to put out monthly Weed of the Month graphics, and we're looking for funding to do more outreach with invasive species. And we did have an intern this summer of 2024, and they put together an invasive species booklet. So that is 124 pages. We're putting our final edits on that, and it should be available in the next month or 2, we hope, and that'll be free for the public. We received a grant through the National Association of Conservation Districts to work on wildfire preparedness for Polk County. So next slide. We started a wildfire ready program, and we had a community event at Guthrie Park. We also circulated articles in cultivating. We had a podcast episode dedicated to being wildfire ready, and Kevin's going to talk a little bit more about where we want to go with that for 2025. We also got a grant, a smaller grant through NACD, where we were able to buy some weed wrenches and other tools that are for loan for the people in the county. So we had some volunteers out at Cornerstone, took out some of the Scotch broom that was there, and hawthorn, right? Okay. And we put together a brochure for the property that has a nice little map highlighting the different habitats, which is on that table over there if you're interested in checking that out. So Cornerstone got lots of love. If you're not familiar, that is our 87-acre property in the Salt Creek watershed. So we had some volunteers out there that did a riparian planting, about 1,000 plants. And then we also we worked with the Institute for Applied Ecology and the AmeriCorps volunteers to install about 6,000 plants, and that's including Willamette Valley daisy and Kincaid bluebin, among others. And was there another thing in 2024?
It was the two projects were done all in one step.
Okay, so those are just the highlights. And you've got your annual report. Hopefully, you can look at more of what we've been up to. I'm going to turn it over to Evelyn to talk about NRCS funding and contracts. Thanks, Morgan. Morgan's powerhouse. It's a lot in our office and it's partners. So we're lucky. Yeah, you notice in your annual report, there's an NRCS staff page, which appears all my staff are the workforce, and I'm just on vacation, but it's not really the case. I want to thank my staff because I couldn't do what I do without them. Brandon used to be my primary forester, and he's a rock star when it came to working with landowners and helping them write contracts for forest management. And I'm fortunate to have two new employees, Ethan and Eve, and they're also on the rise. And so we have a big crew there. Last year was kind of a bumper year for NRCS, and we did a lot of contracting. If you guys can put it in a pie chart, I don't know if you can get rid of the. Oh, okay. It's cut off a little bit there, but we funded $2,927,294.39, and it shows the breakdown of what those contracts went to. Our largest percentage was to oak restoration projects that took 35% of the funding. And next to that was conifer mixed forest, 20%. And then silvopasture was new. We have not funded silvopasture projects in the past, but through the Inflation Reduction Act funding, we were able to focus on some greenhouse gas emission reduction, which is primarily stimulating vegetative growth on projects. So it could be tree thinning, it could be planting forages to improve a pasture mix. So, and also providing some infrastructure to help rotate animals or livestock around so that there's a more sustainable management practice going on out there. We've had some forest landowners who are interested in this and using livestock to help manage some of the understory and forage for both fire prevention and just pairing one livestock or one agricultural sector with another. So it's working well. They're pretty new projects, so we don't know the final outcome. Back to the oak restoration before I move on from that. Also, working with some really great landowners that are willing to try some new management approaches. And one of those is using goats to manage the understory. And Mark Wessler is here, he can testify. And they have been an amazing tool to take care of poison oak, blackberries, hawthorn, and until you've seen it in action, you wouldn't believe it. And I am a believer. Now, I've always thought it was possible, but seeing it in practice has been a game changer. So we have a few landowners that are embracing that, and it actually, I think, is a probably lower maintenance cost than continuum of spraying, and certainly more environmentally sensitive, managed well. On the silvopasture, similar to that using a variety of different livestock, whether it be sheep or goats or cattle. Meadow restoration is kind of a pairing between lower oak meadow restoration and travel corridors between those and upland forest meadows. So it's building some connectivity for wildlife movement. Most of the projects are predominantly oak, and we've had a lot of interest in that. Funding pool is North Polk County and runs up into the tribal lands in Yamhill County. So it's been around for a while. We have good partnership with the tribe and have quite a bit of participation and still have interest in that. And then source water protection is for irrigation improvements to protect in-stream water draw for irrigation purposes. So there are mostly irrigation efficiency projects, pump efficiency, and one of the projects last year was converting from Big Gun to center pivot, which is quite a big improvement in water, both water savings and energy. And then the other one was from overhead sprinklers to drip system. So a lot going on there and still some interest in that. We have a little bit of interest in our stewardship program, which the original adage was reward the best, encourage the rest. So landowners already practicing land stewardship. There's an evaluation done to help them determine what level they are and what other enhancements or activities they'd like to do to continue improving management on their operation. We don't have a lot of contracts for that, and we do have a few. And then lastly, we had, and it's now expired, but erosion and orchards, this was the last year for that. And that was to provide vegetation in the understory so that you have less surface runoff, better infiltration, organic matter. And we have a few vineyards that participated in that to plant diverse vegetation between the rows. So that's a look at what happened in 2024. The next slide shows the acreage breakdown. We contracted on 1,263 acres. Most of that being, again, on the oak, similar breakdown, but a little bit more acreage in erosion than in stewardship and meadow restoration and source water protection without. In 2025, the outlook, this is just based on the applications that we have and the rough estimates that we've done. If funding were available, we would be able to fund about $3 million in projects. That's unlikely, so we'll receive that. And it shows and this is based on the continuation of the Inflation Reduction Act funding. We don't know the status on that at this point, but we're continuing to plan for forest projects and basically programmatically, programs are arbitrary, conservation is static. So what is needed on the land doesn't change. It's just the mechanism that we're being able to fund the project through. So we'll just hang tight and see what comes down the pipe and hopefully be able to get those landowners the help that they've requested. This shows meadow restoration. We had quite a lot of interest on some oak projects. I may or may not have funding in that pool, but we do have funding for some in the South County and the area, that Oak area. And then we have a smattering of other interests for organic transition, which includes some roof runoff catchment for micro irrigation, and then IRA pasture land infrastructure and vegetation improvement. And there's a little tiny sliver for forest management. That's actually having a technical service provider write a forest management plan on a property that has requested that system so that they have a a record of what's in their stand, what's been treated, what future treatment needs will be, and it gives them direction forward, whether it be for land transition to the next generation or just for their own benefit in knowing what they've got and what they can anticipate needing to do in the future. And then high tunnel systems, it's the national initiative, and we just kind of have a regular annual interest in that to for farm to table production, small commercial operations where they can grow locally and provide that to local communities for their own use and sustainability. That is the outlook I have. That hopefully that got you.
Thank you.
So, kind of like, you know, kind of follow up on the opportunities and the gaps that we see on the district side. You know, in that survey that I talked about a minute ago, one of the big things that was identified was a source of information. So we worked, not just Polk, but districts across the state that worked with our statewide organization, OACD, Oregon Association of Conservation Districts, they got some funding to build a grant hub, which is a consolidated source of conservation related grants all in one place. Primarily at this point, it's for us on the support side to look at, but I really wish I could tell you a huge amount. I haven't been trained on that with myself, but it's literally brand new as of 10 days ago. Just briefly looking through it, it's an immense amount of information where we can go. Somebody comes in with a concern, we can say, great, we can look down the list. This may fit what it needs. It covers government sources, private sources, commercial sources. There's all sorts of funding out there available. You know, we think we're gonna have to look at more and more to do this kind of work. Part to that is a natural climate solutions project guide. When we identify a project to try to leverage those green solutions money that may be out there to help that landowner with their project. So could be a secondary source of funding. You have a primary goal, but we may be able to find again secondary source of funding somewhere to help achieve that what we need to do. Like Morgan brought up, you know, we started the community wildfire program. We worked with the community. We had a fantastic event, great turnout. Just still kind of pushing that down the road, see where we need to go. You know, there's a desire for that here in Polk County. Every time we talk about it with people, they're interested, they want to do it, they want more information. We just want to know what we can do that will help us. We don't want to come out with a program that everybody's like, that's not what we want to do. But there is a part of that, you know, working with some training that Morgan and I just did. I'm now a certified community wildfire planner. So, and there is a prescribed burn training in here on the 24th in Corvallis. So if anybody's interested in learning more about how these small prescribed burns manage fire being used in and around communities to help with this wildfire mitigation work, that'll be a really great class. thing we see a lot is staff, you know, kind of everywhere we go on site visits that we always kind of wanted to mention for everybody is, you know, on our ag lands and even our forestry grounds, the channel, the gully erosion. You know, we see ditches that is continually erode and get deeper, especially on any kind of ground with the slope. Soil moves downstream, you know, canary grass, which is invasive, but it does a fantastic job of trapping that silt and lower ditches, filling all that up, creating problems. So, I was just at a place earlier this week where that's like a major problem on ag property. So, seeing, you know, what we can do to combat that for a few minutes over.
Okay, thanks. Part of that prescribed burn thing that Kevin mentioned, it's not just a workshop, there's a discussion about we're starting a prescribed burn association for Polk County. So if you're interested in participating in that in any capacity, I'd encourage you to go to that meeting, email me, I can send you details about that, February 24th for that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Donna. She will facilitate our panel discussion. So just a little bit of a transition time and resituate.
We're gonna take our podium and go.
No, doesn't have to be. Meeting. Right, and Morganton, my name is Donna Kinsel, I'm board member for the Southern Water Station District. And today we have a panel, we have two service providers. We have 4 landowners. And the purpose here is to have them highlight some of the things that they do. Services, and also for landowners to talk about some of the projects or the successes that they have with different conservation projects on their own. So what I'm going to do is I'm the facilitator, so I have to keep them in mind. And they all have prepared a little bit to talk and give me some questions ahead of time. But again, this is about information. Some of you might be new landowners, some of you might be new to the district, or where maybe you don't have like this. I will say that everybody is involved with conservation. It doesn't matter whether you own land, whether you work with conservation. I was when I came to conservation, not that I wasn't always interested in it, but I came later on in life in terms of owning property. And then I learned that there's a lot of owning property. And it's my second retirement. So anyway, the role today then is to facilitate this and to have you get some information about being a landlord or being a good steward of the land and understanding what you can do to be a part of the conservation practice and help with that. I would like you to hold all your questions till the end. I'm going to introduce each panel member, and then they'll talk to you about what they do and what or some of the experiences that they have. And then please, though, keep some questions in mind. We will open it up to questions after the presentation. Also, to remind you that you need to stress certain things, take care of yourself. There will be a break during the panel, so please do that. We're going to start out with Olivia Jasper. Down on the end, so Olivia, you want to stand up again? Olivia is a regional water quality specialist in the South Willamette and Mid-Coast regions. She is involved in the ODA Ag Water Quality Program and has been active with this for the last 3 years. Other experiences with Missouri Department of Conservation, Army, Corps of Engineers, and Environmental Compliance. Her favorite part of the job is getting out into the field with ag producers and learning more about fish and ag waste, talking with them and walking the fields and streams. So,
Hi, thank you. So, when Kevin was emphasizing that SWCD is not a regulatory agency, I am the boogeyman he was talking about. ODA's Ag Water Quality Program does have a compliance component to it. And, the question I got, from Morgan for, spending time with y'all on this panel was, what do I see to the greatest threat to water quality in Oregon or in the area, or biggest water quality concerns. And so this is what I came up with. So first of all, for my program, the Ag Water Quality Program, this is what they would tell you. A lack of awareness of the rules on the part of the landowners. So there's 38 ag water quality management areas throughout Oregon. And they each have their own set of rules. And the biggest thing we see is that people don't even know that they exist, and you can be out of compliance with them and not even realize. So ODA and SWCDs and other conservation entities make a very concerted effort to recognize farmers and ranchers when they're already doing a great job, and then also communicate out guidance and technical assistance about the existence of these rules and how to come into compliance with them if they're not. And like I said, some people might not know that they're out of compliance, and this can come from anything from using generational practices that need to be maybe updated, or being new farmers is a lot of the time where we see people coming in from out of state, or first-time farmers that don't realize that certain management practice decisions can have negative impacts on water quality. So we do this through coming to work group meetings, and through our website, and other types of annual meetings through our other conservation partners. And we use this opportunity to equip landowners with awareness so that they can be proactive in their management practices, to come into compliance on their own that we never even know about, or just be aware and understand that the rules exist. And what we found is that most ag producers really want to be doing what's right. And I'll follow up with a landowner story that from a compliance case that I had that really shows this. Okay, yes, I have time. But so that's what my program would say was there's a lack of awareness of the rules. But what I have seen in my role as regional water quality specialist is part of my role is also to go to landowner groups such as LAC meetings, for example, local advisory committees, where we review our ag water quality plans and our rules. We provide information and updates about programs and conservation practices that are going on in the management area. And then we get feedback from the local advisory committee about what is happening or what's missing in the community. And this usually includes DEQ talking to us about Department of Environmental Quality, talking to us about the data that they have on water quality parameters of concern that may lead to total maximum daily load, CMDL. And basically ODA, being a designated management agency, provides the opportunity for DEQ to talk to landowners in this setting and tell them, hey, there's a water quality parameter of concern in your area, and ODA has some ideas about what you can do about it. And a lot of the time we're met with skepticism from the landowners just about the data coming from DEQ in general. And that can lead to like some complicated conversations where landowners want ODA or the SWCD or the Watershed Council to kind of monitor and prove to them that ag is the one that needs to fix it, or that ag is the problem, which is not what ODA or DEQ is saying. We're not saying ag is the problem. We're saying, let's get started on doing what we can to fix things. There are some very real known issues and fixes to certain ag water quality parameters of concern, and they align pretty
exactly with our water quality rule. So if you don't have cover crops, please consider talking to the SWC or watershed councils or NRCS about their cover crop program. If you don't have a riparian buffer, you are required to allow one to establish. And if you don't have manure storage, you need some sort of manure management, please talk to the SWC. And it's really as simple as that. But landowners still want us to monitor, to kind of show them that ag is an issue before getting started. And I see this as landowners being very protective of their community, because especially the local advisory committee members, they're usually people that aren't even just in compliance with the ag water quality rules. They go above and beyond, and they have these restoration projects that y'all have talked about today. And so what I see as our responsibility is for ODA and DEQ to be able to communicate better, basically saying that we're all getting started together. ODOT and the counties are looking at their roads and their management practices for that. Oregon Department of Forestry is meeting and talking about their practices as well. And ODA is trying to talk to ag producers about what we can do to mitigate ag water quality parameters of concern. So in short, the biggest barrier to water quality, in my opinion, is feeling like all of these sectors are working against one another, when in truth, we're actually working toward the same goal, which is protecting our resources, being able to use them for longer and passing them on to the next generation. So I did mention that I will talk about the landowner success story. So I had a water quality complaint from a neighbor on Rock Creek. So obviously not in this management agency or area, sorry. But the SWCD in that management area did accompany us. And so what we saw on the property was legacy issues, to where if the property is set up like this, the stream was like kind of cutting a corner off of their property, and their barn was right here. So they had llamas, chickens, goats, ducks, and they were a first-time farmer. They had sold their little house in Portland and were running a hobby farm. And so they were kind of bought into this land that then, when they had animals in their farm, was hammering the banks of the creek, causing bare ground. And it was an infrastructure issue. It really wasn't a management issue. And so the area regularly flooded, washing manure into the system. And we came and we talked to the landowner, and the SWCD was able to come up with a plan for them where they built a manure storage shed. They also connected the landowner with neighbors that wanted the manure that could come and offsite it and help her manage it in that way. And then they were able to put in fencing, and they're doing this really cool project where they're actually building a living fence. They're putting in livestock exclusion fencing just along the bank of the creek. And then they're planting like shrubs and brush that will come up to a point where the chickens won't be able to scratch it out. And so and then they're gonna let them back into the area. So they'll still have access to the stream, but it'll encourage them like up to the rest of the property to scratch around there, because there actually is plenty of land for the amount of animals that she has. And if ODA was doing that on their own, just a compliance case without involving the SWCD, we would probably require livestock riparian exclusion fencing and nothing else. But the landowner was really cared about aesthetics, and the SWCD was there to say, like, we can do that. We have creative solutions and we can help you pay for this. And so they're really happy, and we're really impressed with them as well. And that's everything that I have.
Thank you very much. You can figure out why, you know, I could read and yeah, I'm a speaker, Teresa Grant. And Teresa is the district conservationist of Salem Natural Resources Conservation Services, or NRCS, field offices in Marion County. She grew up on a dairy farm in eastern Iowa and did her bachelor's degree at Iowa State University in global resource systems, environmental science, and agronomy. During her time at Iowa State, which was been about 8 years, I guess, before she worked as a research technician in soil health and plant interactions lab for 3.5 years, and did internships and service learning in Peru, Uganda, and India related to soil health. She then went on to do her master's degree at Ohio State University where she studied the impact of oil and gas pipeline installation on crop yields and soil processing. After finishing up her work at that other OSU, she moved to Oregon in 2022 and has been working with Marion County farmers as an NRCS employee since that time.
Great, thank you. It sounds super impressive. Really, that's like actually for a period of time. But I was asked to come today and speak a little bit about soil health, since that's my background. But first of all, I just wanted to say that my perspective on soil health is a little bit different than probably a lot of people in this group, just because I grew up in a very different area. So the Midwest is obviously a lot of open land for the most part. So my family grew up in an area that looks pretty similar to the Willamette Valley, but it was in the Midwest. There's different mindsets and objectives about things, but really similar ways of getting to the end goals. So first of all, the first question that I was asked was, well, if people want to know a little bit more about their soil, how do we even start the process? And let's say hi, let me introduce myself and come and see you here, Evelyn. We also have our resource soil scientist for NRCS in the room with the. She's amazing. So she goes out and does highly erodible land and wetland determinations, but her entire background is about soil health and soil science and outreach. So if you have any questions, reach out to us. There's also a really cool website called Web Soil Survey. And that allows you to go in and like find your own acreage of land and then basically print a soil report. So it'll tell you the exact type of soil, their soil texture, and then tons of different properties about organic matter and the ability to grow trees and things like that. They're adding stuff to it all the time. So there's tons of resources, but if you don't know where to start, you can either reach out to NRCS or the SWCD and definitely start it. But soil is different than soil health, right? So when I'm going to be a little interactive, I do a lot of outreach with kids, so bear with me. What's the difference between soil and soil? There's like one word different, right? So it's health. So when we talk about health in the human sector, we're really talking about how our body works together. And so it's mental health, it's physical health. So everything ties into each other. And the same thing is true about soil, right? Because soil is living. It's a living biological entity underneath the ground. That's a whole ecosystem of really big critters that we think about, like moles and earthworms, but then also really tiny microscopic bacteria and fungi that we can't see, but we know are doing a ton of work. So when we're thinking about that, we really need to be thinking about how we can protect and feed that ecosystem so that it can function. If nature always wants to do its own job, right? We just want to help it get there a little bit faster sometimes. And so to be able to help the soil do what it needs to do, we want to make sure that we're minimizing disturbance, so we're not breaking up that home that all of the critters are in, and then having living root systems, constantly feeding all of these systems underneath the ground, and then having cover on top of the ground as well. So a lot of that, like Olivia mentioned, can be done through things like cover crops, right? So you have a living plant above the ground, roots below the ground, it's constantly there. And especially if you do like no-till drill or just reduced tillage in general, you're not doing as many, it's not breaking out the soil a lot. So those simple practices can be really effective. And then like Olivia, I also want to share a that story. And they're a little bit different, right? Because at NRCS in Polk County, we do a lot of forestry work. In Marion County, we do a lot of cropland work and pasture work. But they have the same basic, right? So it's figuring out what the goal is of the property and then figuring out what we can do together to be really creative about solutions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about two of my farmers that I work with. So one's a pasture. They have grass-fed beef that they raise, and they've got 25 head. They moved up from California a couple of years ago, and so they're getting used to the area. Right? It's very different than like southern and central California, where it's pretty hot and dry. So they asked us to come out, and it was one of my very first site visits when I moved here. Okay, getting on the cattle. And then we went out there, and it was mid-February, a lot more than we've had this year. And all of a sudden, they were just like, we don't know what to do. We're getting ulcers on our cow's feet, and they're like, we've got a twisted ankles, and we don't really know what's happening. Like this has never happened when we were growing, when we were ranching before. So we ended up just putting on our muck boots and a big coat, and we went out into the field
on a super rainy day. And found out that half of her cows were getting stuck up to the like mid calf in mud, right? Because there wasn't a place for them to congregate. It was just a big empty hayfield. It was 40 acres. And so they've been out there the whole entire time and she didn't really think about it. They had water, they had feed, so they were just out there. And so with that, we were able to see what the problem was. There was a lot of soil erosion that was happening because of it, and her pasture is getting degraded. So great pasture in the first place, but then with the cattle being out all the time, it kind of broke down all the plants that were out there. They weren't coming back as well. So we were able to work over the last couple of years and put in a Alexa pipeline so that they didn't have garden hoses exploding all the time and creating extra soil erosion from that. And we're working on a pasture replanting right now along with heavy use areas. So just like the picture that showed before, just different areas that if you're going to have animals in a really small area, be able to have a heavy use area that they can stand on and do all their business and then get out of it. So it's normally around like gates and watering facilities and stuff like that. So we were able to put in heavy use areas and the livestock pipeline as well as the watering itself. And we're going to be doing prescribed grading. So moving the animals a lot faster throughout the pasture so that everything afterwards can regrow, give the pasture a little bit of a break, but still have the feed for the cows. So that's been a really cool project. And then one of the other ones I wanted to highlight was Iowa Farms. So the farm tour that we did this summer. Is anybody familiar with Iowa Farms? No? Yes, a couple of people. Okay. So they have a couple of different entities, but basically they grow a lot of grass seed and seed crops as well as hazelnuts. And I linked up with them a couple of years ago just to talk about stuff. And we were out there and they're just like, we don't really know what to do. We've got a lot of soil erosion that's happening on this one area. And they were already starting to talk about conservation cover. So like permanent cover that's going to be in between their hazelnuts. And so this summer we were able to have a farm tour that we had a work with people that showed up and go through all the implements that they use on the farm right now to manage. Instead of having bare ground in between their hazelnut rows, they've been planting pine fescue, creeping red fescue, and they've been able to manage it well. And then in the middle of the spring, when it's really wet in other hazelnut orchards, they're able to get on a little bit. And then they don't have any issues harvesting their crop later in the fall. So that was really cool. And during that tour, we actually had some researchers from OSU and from U of O that came out and spoke about their research there. So OSU was a grad student who came out and was talking about irrigation water, which obviously here in the summer, faucet just turned off. We don't really get a choice with it. And he was explaining that in his research over the last couple of years, he's been able to show that there's decreased water use in hazelnuts that have a conservation cover beneath them. So you're using less irrigation if you've got extra crops growing in the middle to help maintain that evapotranspiration from the soil. It also decreased the temperature so that they weren't seeing as many trees that were dying because of stress. It was really important over the last couple of years when we've had the heat domes and the ice storms. We're getting a lot more stress in our orchards. And then the researchers from U of O are doing some research on native plant species as a conservation cover in between. So having that pollinator benefit as well as just doing that conservation cover. And so they were able to talk about the fact that they were sourcing the native seeds, and we have things like camas and Kincaid lupin that were actually sprouting in between the hazelnut orchards, especially in the younger stands. And then they're finding that the older stands, like the 15-year-olds that are closed canopy, they're actually shade tolerant. So when in those systems, if you've got something like a creeping red fescue, it needs a little bit more sun, so it'll probably die off when you get to the closed canopy. But in those systems that have the native plants, they were used to being overshaded, so they can still thrive in the systems. So that's all I learned. And
Our next speaker is Eden Polk. Eden is a sixth generation farmer, and she doesn't look too bad for sixth generation. She has a degree in sustainable agriculture, experience farming in California, Washington, and abroad. In 2016, she started Lucky Crow Farm in Monmouth. Lucky Crow produces diversified vegetables for CSA, farmers market, restaurant accounts, and online stores. They aim to provide nutritious, accessible food to their community while maintaining ecosystem health and economic sustainability. He also serves as a work for zoning people water conservation district.
Donna? Okay, so my name is Olson, as Donna just mentioned, I have a farm here in Monmouth, about 4 minutes away from here. I'm farming family farmland, which has historically been seed farm, conventionally managed seed crop, and it's about 70 acres total, with 55 of that being tillable acres. A small percentage of that is the vegetable production that I grow, although I personally manage the entire land. It's owned by my parents. About 15 years ago, my immediate family purchased it from extended family. And since then it has been managed organically, although it's not, we have dropped the organic certification, but we're not using any chemicals, for better or for worse. Like Donna mentioned, I do farmers market, CSA. I have an online store, and then my partner does a pop-up restaurant in town, and so a lot of my produce has been, I'm growing specialty crops for her, and y'all will actually eat some of her food later. Yeah, so right now 99, if any of you are aware of like the Mar Brothers bark dust plant, so our land goes up against them. And then also to the north of the land is the urban growth boundary for the city of Monmouth. So we're up against the urban growth boundary, up against Mar Brothers, hay farm on the east side, and another farm on the south side as well. So kind of nestled in there between Talmadge Road and 99. EFU, like I said, historically seed crops, mostly grass seed and wheat nodes, but and all unirrigated, and that has obviously changed with vegetable production and market. What I'm growing mostly on woodburn silt loam, but the property has 7-ish soil types there, navy silt loam, manganese silt loam, etc., which moderately drained soil and heavy clay. So I have a lot of organic matter as well. I actually received all of the leaves from the city of Monmouth. They dump them out on the property. That breaks down. And we get what we call black gold, which has a lot of trash in it. It's a pros and cons. We have Ash Creek runs right through the middle of the property. So we have that as the water source for irrigation. And then we also have a drainage swale that comes through one of our fields that's from that industrial, from the Mar Brothers area. So, and that goes out into Ash Creek on our property. We have surface water rights as of the last 5 years, which means essentially we can pull water out of Ash Creek during the wet season, November through May, which is obviously not when we need water, so we have to hold it somewhere. So also we've recently built a 50-acre-foot reservoir to hold that water, which is enough water to irrigate the entire 60-ish acres. Currently I'm only using it for vegetables, but we have plans to expand. So the south of Ash Creek, we have about a 4-acre oak woodland area that has, to be frank, been neglected, and now I've learned that I need to get some goats because it's all poison, Himalayan blackberry, and there has been some equipment has been through there, and so there's some major threats. So that's part of the visioning process that I'll get to later, working with family and trying to figure out next steps for the farm is always a challenge. But we've also got a lot of wildlife, a new blue heron nesting area on our riparian zone, annoying things like lots of ground squirrels and lots of rats. But also owls, coyotes, bobcats, you know, you name it. We saw a little river otter the other day, which was fun. And we found that with the decrease in chemical use on the farm, we have seen an increase in wildlife, but we've also seen an increase in Himalayan blackberry, and it's taking over. And so we're trying to figure out the balance of how to, you know, navigate that, the conservation concerns. So the goals for managing the land, essentially, my vision for sustainability is one that, you know, promotes ecological health, but also is profitable. And I'm not going into managing this farmland with a lot of resources and time. And so conservation portion has been on the back burner, and creating a profitable business has been at the forefront of my mind. I'm getting now to my 8th year in farming, and I'm able to sort of step back a little bit and have the time and resources to work on some of those conservation projects. Another goal is to do long-term visioning. I'm at the farm. My brother has a art studio on the farm and uses wood from the farm to do sculpture. So he's running a business off of the farm. My parents are planning on retiring on the farm in the next 10 years. My other brother has zero interest in rural living or farmland, but he'll inherit the farm at some point, part of it. So we're all trying to come together and figure out a way to manage this property. And it's slow and it's complicated, and it's nothing like if I just went out and bought a piece of property on my own. I don't get to make all those decisions. And it doesn't move very fast. So that's kind of one of the big things we're dealing with. I will say that our top resource concern currently is water. Water quality, as well as sort of disaster resiliency in water. So I received a grant from the Community Food Systems Network, the last funding cycle, and it's for creating an irrigation system that will help me in heat waves and cold snaps to maintain cooling on crops, as well as frost resistance on crops, just overhead water system, as well as efficient drip system that will we'll see if NRCS will fund that version that application as well. So and I guess just to quickly plug NRCS, the reason that my business has been able to grow as fast as it has is because of the high tunnel funding that I received from them. I'm able, like currently I'm harvesting regularly throughout the winter season, and y'all will have some produce from me later today that harvested Tuesday. So it's been great for increasing the season, the shoulder seasons, as well as bringing products to market early, and overall just enhancing the profitability of the farm. Also, quickly in terms of water quality, I mentioned that drainage swale that's coming off of the industrial property right next door, and we've had issues in the past with that being contaminated, and so I'm looking for future projects to do some planting potentially with Lucky Butte Watershed Council guidance to do some filtration and figure out a way for that water to enter our portion of Ash Creek more clean than it was at the get-go. The good news is that is below my irrigation pump is upstream from that, so it's not as much of a direct concern to my growing currently. But that is what I have.
Sounds like your next conference or whatever. Next speaker is George Foster. George is an agronomist and agritarian a farm management and consulting company that works with growers in Western Oregon. His work is mainly focused on the sustainable farming of organic blueberries, hazelnuts, and kiwi berries, with an emphasis on integrated pest management and habitat plantings to support native beneficial insects and pollinators. George has installed and maintained over 6 miles of beneficial insect hedgerows, various other pollinators, insect plantings, and helped growers attain bee better certification on nearly 2,500 acres of organic blueberries.
Good. Well, that was the first half of my speech right there. I go fast. So yeah, my name is George Kaufman. I'm an agronomist or crop advisor for AgriCare. We're based in Jefferson, Oregon, and we also have a corporate office in California. I've been with the company a little over 10 years, almost 11 years, and we work with growers throughout Western Oregon. Actually, majority of the work we do has been in Polk County, the Independence area. Our clients are individuals or families who don't have the time or the means to manage their land, their farms, as well as we manage farms for investors. I also, as I mentioned earlier, I have a native nursery, Oak Hollow Farm, where I grow native plants and sell them either to the projects that we're doing on farms, as well as to landowners throughout Oregon who have a need for native plants. And then I also own property in Silverton, in the Victor Point Hills, Silverton Hills, and currently in the middle of a project taking about 3 acres of land that was overran by Himalayan blackberries, and I've been working with the Marion County Soil and Water District, Conservation District, we got some grant money from them. We've had all the blackberries mowed down and get ready to restore that land and put in some native plants. So the farms that we manage, blueberries, hazelnut, and kiwi berries are the 3 main crops that we manage. A lot of our work has mainly been done in the blueberry farms that we manage. We do a lot of organic blueberries. And organic blueberries, there are some organic pesticides that we can use, but for the most part, against insects such as aphids, there's really not a lot of good tools out there to manage them, except for training for hot weather. So the only way to reduce the population. Additionally, blueberries are not a favorite plant for honeybees to pollinate. So it's really difficult to get our blueberries pollinated. You can bring in lots of honeybees. It's expensive, but for the most part, honeybees would rather go somewhere else. And if there's a neighboring mustard field, we've lost the majority of our honeybees. They pay out as soon as they get a chance. So we're motivated to improve the pollinator and beneficial insect habitat around our farms to benefit or to boost the population of native pollinators, such as bumblebees, which are actually really good blueberry pollinators. They're able to get in there, they're able to shake the pollen loose. They work in cool weather, they work in wet weather. They're a lot less lazy than those bees. And then we're also trying to find ways to keep down the pest populations, specifically aphids. And so what we're trying to do is we're putting in hedgerows and just different blooming habitats throughout our farms to try to increase the numbers. And a lot of those, the predatory and parasitoid insects that feed on aphids, that prey on aphids, the adult stage needs flowers, nectar, pollen resources to live out their life cycle. And from there they move out to the crop, lay their eggs, or feed on the lay their eggs, and then their larvae, and the babies, and feed on the pests, insects. And so what we've done some large plantings of blueberries. At one point, we had one of the largest planted blueberries in North America, had about 600 some acre planting of blueberry. And there's not a lot of habitat in the middle of that planting. So what the client did was they asked us to, right down the middle of the planting, we put a large hedgerow. And then where we put in blooming native plants. And our intention is to have plants that bloom from March all the way through November. And so what we're trying to do is provide pollen and nectar resources all summer long, so we can keep boosting the population, so the bumblebees stick around and raise their babies. And then they'll overwinter on our farm and be there for next spring to pollinate our blueberries. So we put in a couple large hedgerows. We monitored the insect populations for the next 8 or 9 years, and what we saw was just a big increase in beneficial insects over that time. The population got knocked back in 2021 with that heat dome event, but then the years after that, they recovered again. So what we're seeing is these habitats are really good at actually boosting beneficial insects, bringing them into the farm and keeping them around. So that's a lot of the work we do. Additionally, we look for opportunities on the farms where there is non-crop area that's not productive. So steep hillsides, odd shaped corners. We had one farm where we had a couple acres, 2-3 acres of land right above some wetland that was just covered in Himalayan blackberries. So we went in there, removed the blackberries, and planted native plants there. And it's now just a 2 or 3 acre solid planting of shrubs and trees and perennials that bloom all summer long. And it's a really neat, success to take this land that had been only ran by blackberries, turn into this dynamic planting where we have a lot of insects, a lot of beneficial insects. Let's see. Additionally, so in blueberries, another pest that's difficult to control is spotted wing Drosophila. It's a fruit fly that likes to lay its eggs on berries that are starting to ripen or ripe. It's not a vinegar fly or fruit fly that goes after rotting fruit, and so it's a really bad pest. And generally, what growers have to do, because there's almost no tolerance for this larva or this insect to show up in the packer or the processor, would be a lot of sprays. And you can keep the insect under control with a lot of sprays, but then you have other pests that show up, scale insect aphids, that just because you're wiping out all the beneficial insects. And so what we've done on these farms, put in this habitat, and just recently it's USDA has begun to release this parasitoid wasp. And so we're able to, parasitoid wasp attacks or targets the larva stage of the spotted wing Drosophila insect pest. But the adults need the flower, they need habitat to be in. So we've released this parasitoid wasp on farms with good habitat. And the insect is able to get established, it's able to spread, it's able to do its thing throughout the farm. They've released some other farms with habitat that's not been real good. And the wasp doesn't establish or does not establish as well. So these habitats are a really neat way to help knock back that really bad pest that we have. Let's see. Some other unintended benefits of our plantings. Just an increase in the amount of birds. So we've had bird counts on our farms. One of the groups that came out was Audubon Society. They did a count and they said it was one of the largest concentrations of red-tailed hawks they'd ever seen. That's more probably because we had a lot of mice and voles, but still that was pretty neat. So not only are we benefiting beneficial insects that benefit a crop, but also insects that benefit the bird population and just the broader fauna, that's out there. I will say a lot of our clients, though they're large and have a decent amount of money, and sometimes they're maybe disconnected from their farm. A lot of them really truly care about their farms that they own and the environment and their impact on the environment, their impact on the community around them. So this work, when I started it 11 years ago, I didn't have a big background in conservation. I did grow up on a farm. So I did have an understanding of land and land management, but it was really these owners that really pushed us to put in these habitats, and we at the beginning partnered with the Xerces Society to go out to our farms and do an evaluation, and kind of gave us some ideas of what we could do to improve it. And then from there, we've kind of taken and implemented it on multiple farms. But I do want to just give a little shout out to our owners who really care about habitat. And in some cases, they have foregone planting a row or two of blueberries and instead planted habitat in there. And obviously, they're not getting a direct financial benefit from that. But they cared enough and wanted to take that leap of faith that the planting would actually benefit their farm. Maybe not always the way it's quantified, but certainly we have seen benefits. This past summer, we have a farm south of Independence here in the Buena Vista area. We worked with Polk's Soil and Water FET to get some grant money. We got some grant money through OWEB, and we were able to put in about 1,500 feet, I think, of hedgerows with all the native plants, as well as improve some riparian areas along the Willamette River. We did a little bit of blackberry control, as well as planted willows, things, spirea, things like that. To stabilize the things or the areas where it floods, and then also planted some perennials to improve the amount of pollinator habitat in those areas. So that's been great. We've most of the grant money we've gotten has been through the soil and water districts of the county that we're in, either money from them or they've helped us find grants out there. Through my nursery, I've worked with just homeowners, small homeowners or landowners. I sell them plants, but as well as I give them advice and kind of help them, direct them, and I guess the best plants to plant, how to plant, how to have more success. And I've noticed just kind of some needs out there with the just practical advice, I guess, and from people that are experienced in these habitat installations. So a lot of landowners out there want to put these hedgerows in, they want to put pollinator habitats, and they just don't always know who to turn to and the resources that are readily available. A lot of our larger growers through AgriCare, they have the wherewithal, the means, the money to partner with Xerces or some of the larger resources out there. But it's just a lot of the hedgerow or a lot of the whether it's they just want to put the pollinator habitat in, or whether they're recovering from a wildfire, don't always know where to turn. So that's something that we try to provide either through AgriCare or through myself personally, is helping those people out. Is there anything else I wanted to touch on? I just wanted one thing about the honeybees and just the beneficial pollinators that we're trying to encourage. We're not trying to replace honeybees. That's unlikely to happen, but it's a really nice insurance to have native pollinators out there. They show up every year. They don't cost you any money. They don't charge you anything, but they're there. It's an added layer of insurance. Like I said, they work during the cool weather where the honeybees won't. We've seen on farms where we have really good habitat farm. We've seen 25 to 30% of the pollination that's done on blueberries is being done by these native wild bees. So that's a really neat. It's really neat. It's a lot of really good work that's being done that benefits the farms. So I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Jared. I don't know about all of you, but I've been enjoying all these positive stories. Bringing back life, farms and land and bees. Next speaker, Sarah Darling. Sarah grew up on a family farm east of Malala. She attended Richmond College, where she became a BA in political science. She then went to Reed College, where she earned a master's of teaching for high school social studies. She taught 1 year at Carmel High School in Portland, Oregon, 2 years in the Navajo, on the Navajo reservation in Arizona. She raised 4 children, partly in Oregon, partly in Germany, 8 years in Germany. She honed skills in gardening and working with some livestock. And after her husband died of cancer in 1996, she took over the management of Xenophone. He learned on the job from German landowners at that time. She says she's still learning. Okay, Sarah. Some of you know, maybe I'm repeating things that you already know, and I love things about the book. We're gonna follow down the schedule here. We're located, for those of you who don't know, along the crest of the hill with hill. So, it's a more, that my vegetable. And it's a really fun property because we're along the crest of the hill. We have all sorts of different levels. We have drainage to the east and we have drainage to the west. We have places that are very moist. We have places that are very dry and difficult for laundry. And all different microsites with different understories. And you can read from what grows in the understory what kind of trees are going to thrive there. If you're lucky enough to stay on the property. Yeah. So the fun place to be, I guess an interesting fact that didn't even have this on my list is that we have a permanent conservation easement for forever on this property, but as a working tool. And we were one of the first BPA working towards easements in the mitigation work that they have to do to make up all the habitat, their dams and power. And in each part of the state, they have to protect the most endangered habitat. And the most endangered habitat in the is Polk. So that was, along with the former owners who were driven the fact that we did not cut down all of our against the Department of Forestry and they recommend to plant them. So we're a big mixture of lots of oak, maple, and beverage. And we do like mills of paper. But we do take good care of the oak. And I was thinking we must have planted between 30 and 50,000 trees. And so that the fact that there was the Germans who owned this property or said it's enough. I managed it for them for 10 years before a big chunk of that property in mine. It was angels on my shoulders. But they valued the oak. But there was really no market and no infrastructure to sell oak in the land. So we sat on the oak and we took care of it and we placed it aside and just stayed and cut the fur away. And no market. How am I going to do this? And my original mission was to prove that ecological forestry, a very healthy forest ecosystem, and an economical, viable forest ecosystem should be one of them. I was gonna, and I failed. We're still working. And so we did start, I started it and my son has taken it over, making flooring out of art. And some of you know that we've gotten to the point where we're sort of recognized as the local place to go with oak. So those of you who don't know, part of our mission, besides trying to make a living, is to create a market for oak in the valley, to encourage people to keep their oak instead of planting 5 more acres of people. Just because it is important to bring them more of that habitat back. But we do pay a premium to people who are keeping their Polk. We used to not even buy Polk from people who were converted. But then we realized some of that was just going up in burn piles. So now we pay a lower price. We can buy that and put it into products so it's and along all of that, we have very little 3 watersheds, but we have technically no year-round. Several seasonal one that goes Spring Valley to the Willamette on the Salem, and some that goes to the South Yamhill, north, and much of it to Riverville. We keep 3 different watch. When we have probably 1 or 2 or 3 small natural ponds here and there, and we have some ponds that have been done for irrigation early, and some fire ponds that we done many years. And wildlife, you know, mentioned, and we have way too many. Go back on where they came from. I think in spite of our best efforts, I think our bird populations are diminishing, and even our small mammals, the middle-sized mammals, not good, are not as abundant as they were. And you know, resource concerns, we thought about that. And well, Ben, my son, who runs the mill, wants me to talk about ash. And the fact that we're trying to, well, you all have creeks have ash, I imagine, in Polk County. And ash turns out to be a lovely hardwood. You would be very surprised to see the ash floor and that floor. It's really clearer than I thought it would be. And if all that ash dies, we have a giant problem. And so we have a lot of ash regeneration, which I know we're still facing. It's a good tree to have growing along your feet if you want to grow there. It doesn't want to get wet. So we started planting NRCS. Among the ash regeneration. Because we think, we're just looking at our own property, that the oaks have a good chance of thriving almost as far into the creek. You can give the ash or something else, the willows, the crab apples, or whatever else we can do, some alder, some sort to try. But we think something that the NRCS and water to think about is think ahead about how to help folks think about their ash. Because you don't have to like it or not like it, it does provide importance to the environment. So some kind of education and creation of some basic information about what alternatives are. So that's our, and then I personally am just concerned about keeping the water in the ground. And it's not our personal concern so much because we are support every and more than the rest of the so I'm not sure that that's something you already do so much. And so and for many, many years, no one knows I've pictured her any and we've had a nice relationship. Without that help, way farther. And I have no complaints, I just want to say someone hard work for change. And well, invasive species are my perennial. I didn't have my invasive species because I was watching great. Problem one, your problem. The more expansions we build in the hills where the trees grow, the more the water table goes down and less water. And to me, that's a big issue that maybe a big engagement conversation is something about what we want to do. Haven't been careful, we can see that. And we work on the floor. Yeah. Speaker Mark Webster. Mark comes from a military background, not a farming background. He grew up in army bases around the world. With a desire to understand nature, he learned to be as a physics and then joined the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as a member of the 8th Small Uniform Service. NOAA Corps is occasionally referred to as the science service because of its technically capable officers. Over 26 years, he served in a variety of capacities. Positions at sea range from officer of the deck, captain on hydrographic and physical oceanographic vessels. Shore-based positions include mathematical modeling, hydrography, R&D, and research lab and vessel operations leadership roles. From the perspective of his positions and work with scientists, he was able to see the progression of human-caused impacts on the environment, from resource extraction, climate change, and pollution. Prior to his retirement, he purchased 56 acres of land in the Willamette Valley. You know how that his goal is to increase biodiversity and climate resilience on the land.
So I'm here today to cover two ideas. The first is building ecosystems and sharing the land with wildlife while farming. And the second is getting ahead of the impacts of climate change. Next slide, please. You can read some of the statistics on this slide, but there are a couple of takeaways. In the future, it's going to be hotter and drier in the Pacific Northwest. This has some implications. There will be an increased evaporation and correspondingly an increased need for water. Unfortunately, this is expected to happen at a time when rain is expected to decrease in the summers. So you compound the problem. Drier soils will result in poor forage for farm animals and native animals. And you get the increased fire dangers, and seasonal ponds will dry up more rapidly. This is a real problem for the wildlife. And issues. So water is life's matter and matrix, mother and medium. There is no life without water. And I think that's an important thing for the farmers and the ecosystem managers to realize. On the positive side, it is projected that we will get increased rain in the winter. So we have some positives, and the question is, how do we do that? So if you believe in the science, and if you believe in the trends, what are you going to do? To me, it only makes sense to plan for and mitigate the impacts. Try to improve the situation for the wildlife and try to keep the farms running productively. Next slide, please. So on my farm, I'm trying to do 5 things. The oak habitat silvopasture. Again, thank you for NRCS. Without NRCS, I would no longer be a farmer. Not having the resources to do the work. When I first first got to the farm, there was 36 acres of oak forest that was impenetrable, couldn't be used for anything. And Evelyn helped me with that. Modifying the topography and soils to maintain moisture and build habitat. Effective seeding with a seed drill to plant diverse plant mixes. Rotational and targeted grazing using virtual fencing. And this is an important aspect in order to keep the grasses long. Development of woody debris ecosystems. So we come back through, we do all this oak habitat restoration. The question is, what do you do with all that wood? Burning it, kind of about. Putting it in flat pile, really a problem. Next slide, please. So the initial oak forest was impactful. It was blackberries, poison oak, and mid-story trees. And if you see in the top right, with the llama and all the goats, and the bottom right, that's the same section of forest, 3 or 4 years apart. You see that bobcat where it's stuck? To the right, same section of forest, 3 or 4 years apart. And it's really quite amazing. You had 10 to 15 feet high, mid-story trees, poison oak and blackberry. It was just a fire hazard, completely impassable. Next slide. So the advantage of the oak habitat silvopasture is that the shading provides cooling. So if you look at the picture to the right, you see the oak canopies creating a nice shadow on the ground. That helps cool the soil along with the tall grasses. And it helps mitigate the climate issue. It provides shade for the animals, provides shade for the goats. And as you open up the pasture, the fire danger is reduced because the oaks themselves, you have a grass fire going through, they don't burn. Couple of points on how we did the mitigation. No herbicides were used. The slash was not burned. Some of it was forest mulch, some of it was cut and stacked for other uses. And the goats are my long-term solution, keeping the blackberry poison oak and other brush problems in check. Next slide. So now we get all this water in the winter. The question is, what are we going to do with it? So similar to Zenford, my farm was on a hill, so you've got the steep slopes, it's hard to work with things. And we get these seasonal streams. And so what I'm trying to do is build beaver dam analogs with swale extensions on contour. So as the water comes down the draws, you try to spread it out across the hillside. And the beaver dams extensions kind of slow the water down and they sink the water. They sink it to the soil and they sink it to the water table. Some of the logs saved from the oak habitat restoration project were used in making the beaver dam analogs, or will be used in making the beaver dam analogs. And also the buried logs decompose and act as moisture retaining sponges over time. So if you look in the image on the lower right-hand corner, you see a berm. Underneath that berm are some of the logs that I cut when thinning the forest, stacked them over with dirt. And over time, these logs will decompose, they'll become sponges. And when that berm has got some water stacked behind it, the water will soak into the logs and carry moisture further into the summer. Next slide, please. Push down arrow one more time. Okay, this is a little example of the water flow coming through the property. About 5 to 10 gallons a minute. In an afternoon with a shovel and a couple of logs, drop them in, build little small beaver dams to try to slow things down. My goal over time is to get the excavator in, build longer beaver dams, and start working my way up the hillside and trying to store water over longer areas. So in the winter, you get all the water, you put it into the soil acts as a sponge and holds it. And then as it starts to dry out, the water will still continue to flow down through these tiered beaver dams. Next slide, please. One of the other things, so you've got slowing the water down, spreading it out, sinking it. And so some of it goes into the soil, some of it goes into the aquifer. In the southwest corner of the property, I've got a little natural pond, the seasonal pond comes in. But next to it, after I cleared all of the blackberry, poison oak, and mid-story trees, I had this great regrowth of camas. And so what I want to do is I want to try to extend the area of where this camas grows by doing a little belly scraping, sinking everything down about 1 foot in order to increase the wetland, store a little bit more water there. And it would be a great place for the camas to thrive. There's another area where I might transplant the camas and have it grow. Another thing that I'm working with the Polk County Water Master is to start getting permits together for seasonal ponds. And so the wildlife, again, is getting harder and drier. The wildlife needs water further in. And as all the farmers sit there and build their vineyards and throw up their fencing to keep the deer and the elk out, the deer can't transport themselves from one place to another. And so that becomes a problem. And so having a little bit of water on the property and a little longer in the year, the baby deer get large enough to maybe jump the fence. Next slide. Working in the hilly regions that I'm working in, it's really difficult to seed. And so I can't get a tractor in with a seed drill. And I've really tried. I've thrown the seed out. I've sat there and gone through with a forest mulcher and then thrown the seed out, and I can't get anything to work. And so I'm working with, I've got a grant request in with the Oregon Community Food Systems Network to try to buy a small seed drill, and working with Kevin. Hopefully once we get it, we'll be able to share it, because we're not the only ones who have this problem. How do you get seed in some of these remote areas? So a thick cover of diverse grasses have been shown to improve soil moisture by providing a protective canopy that shades soil, reduces evaporation, and by having extensive root systems, as it rains, it channels it down into the soil instead of pushing it to runoff. And so how to keep moisture longer. Next slide, please. So, so you build a good bit of grass, but then you go out and you leave your animals there too long, eats it down to nothing. Oh, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Then back.
No.
Okay. So one of the things I'd like to show you is this image here. So you image taken by a normal camera, and then an image taken by a thermal camera. Anywhere that's bare soil gets hot. Hot soil dries out, dry soil doesn't grow any. And so you've got to keep the soil covered, you got to keep the soil cool, you got to maintain soil moisture. And so having the tools to seed well and be effective at it is going to be really key as it gets hotter, drier. Next slide. Okay. Back way. So one of the things I'm trying to do with NRCS is get the ability for virtual fencing, and which will allow for rotation of grazing. So you can put your animals in, eat down an area a little bit at a time, focus them, shift them off quickly. Eat an area, focus them on that area for a little bit of time, shift them off. And there's areas where you don't want them to be. So going back to the camps, I don't want the goats to eat all the camps. So I would keep them out of the area from, mid-May through the beginning of July. And you prevent them from eating camas. Camas gets a chance to seed and regrow. And then you can put them in there in, August, September, let them eat all they want. I want the camas selector. So timing when and where they're at helps protect the ecosystem. These goats have been great, but they're double-edged sword. The image right here shows poison oak being gnawed on, killing standing poison oak in an area where I can't get in with a brush hog or a bobcat. Sad part is that oak tree, which I purposely saved and tried not to get eaten, got destroyed. They killed about 20 trees this year that I wanted to keep. And so I've got to go back through before I shift them again, protect all the trees that I want, and shift them to another location. But goats are double-edged swords. Really?
I'm very excited.
Yeah, they're pretty hardy unless they've actually.
They burn them all.
Just around that.
Okay. Good to hear. Next slide. And so the development of woody debris ecosystems. So a lot of people go through, let's clear all the wood off, let's put it into a big pile, let's burn it, gone. I didn't want to put the carbon back into the air, so what do you do with the wood? One day I was out there cleaning some debris from underneath the oak canopy, and I found a rubber boa. But this is midsummer. And so you reach down, the soil has a little moisture because the wood pile was shaded by the tree and had a great ecosystem under that wood pile. And so my first iteration of woody debris ecosystem was to do tightly packed bits of wood about 8 feet from the tree so I could get in with the brush hog. I don't need to, the goats keep it clear. And you see a lot more invertebrates, so you're trying to protect the habitat for lizards, snakes, insects, and rodents. And you place it under to provide shade for the summer. Next slide. And that was great. But then I realized by accident that loosely stacked wood piles, and I hate to say it, Himalayan blackberry make a great combination. So the Himalayan blackberry grows up, creates a massive canopy cover. The goats love it for food, and there's voids in it. The animals can come and hide in on hot summer days. So not just the goats, but bobcats. And so you see the bobcat right here. That pile of wood is about 30 feet high. And I hope to get it covered at some point with Himalayan blackberry. I could mow around it, but again, I don't think it's going to be a problem with the goats. Next slide. And because I haven't used any herbicides, the native flowers on this property are just amazing. And so, you know, you've got the camas, the ukao, the organ iris, the red columbine, the mariposa. It's just really wonderful. Next slide. And you know, you're trying to get wildlife in here, the Oregon russet skin newts. The little pond is full of them. I've got about 8 right now. They breed this time of year in the pond. And it's just nice to see all the wildlife and trying to keep everything living and thriving while you're trying to keep an operating goat farm. Anyway, thank you.
All right, well, we're going to have questions, but I'm going to give promise to come back. Then 5-minute break, and then come back and we'll have some questions.
Okay.
And you see, roll call question.
Yes.
Question, maybe it's for the panelists, or maybe for someone else here, maybe you have feedback, thoughts. This is kind of their open discussion time. So, we do have a mic.
You're not allowed to talk to the mic.
Yeah, not afraid to speak up, so might as well. So Mark, thanks for the presentation. You had mentioned the water master, and so I was wondering, you say a little bit more about your experience of getting looking at ponds and water. And I see this in other places around the state, working for extension, that there's really mixed responses from people about getting services, getting help.
So in 2013, when I first bought the property, I went and tried to get rights put in ponds, and it was just a pretty straightforward process. It was a little expensive, but I wanted to put in ponds. And then I came to the property and realized I couldn't do any of it. Ponds were too expensive, the topography was wrong, and the geology was wrong. And so, I mean, but I get permits, and it just didn't work out well. I couldn't execute on anything. Joel, I believe his name is Joel, is that correct?
Yeah.
Joel was great. He came out, we talked about what we were trying to do, and building the beaver dams as well extensions, as long as I don't store any water and the water moves through in about 10 days, he doesn't care. And after that, I start to need to get permits. And so any of the belly scraping or the wildlife ponds would need permits, and the permitting costs were $2,100 to start a permit, and then it's like $45 an acre foot after that. And I'm never going to get any acre feet, so.
Interesting. So it's like, so you can go to the process for like wildlife pond?
Yeah, yeah, they will. If I store a cubic foot of water, I got to go through the process. And so the moment you start trying to store water, it requires a permit.
Great, thanks.
But you said that if you make those little wood things and they are not.
If it's not holding water and it moves through over time, he doesn't care.
Is that on like streams that are year-round streams?
These are seasonal streams, and the goal is the water has to be able to flow through. And so he's not worried about swales that don't store water. And my soil, it will just sink into the ground. And so I'm not dealing with a lot of clay.
Yeah, this is perfect. Mark, about the oak tree, Sarah said that they will be sprout. Maybe, I absolutely agree. I think you said that. But anyway, the ones that were goats, they'll have a more higher chance of resprouting and cut them off.
Okay.
So that'll be comment there.
And protect it.
Yeah.
Question for George. Do blueberry patches or big blueberry patches when it catastrophic fires come through, will they burn?
I've never had a fire go through my blueberry field before, but if you have dry grass especially, or there's sawdust, Yes.
The reason I asked the chairman of the Polk County Forest Land Classification Committee, got all on the committee. And we talked about vineyard, and that's almost no one knows about that committee, but what we do is we're required by law, counties, to go through the protection districts within Oregon. Land protected by the state of Oregon. And see if it is classified as forest for fire fighting, fire carrying purposes, nothing to do with zoning or anything like that. And at the last meeting in December, we had a discussion about vineyards on catastrophic fires. If vineyards, if they're maintained with very little vegetation, will they be wiped out? I'm not concerned with the vineyards. I want to know the process. Will these catastrophic fires go through these other vegetation? So, okay, so you're going.
I don't. I would suspect it would be good.
It will, it's any sort of like woody plant, right? It creates a fire.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the fires up east of Salem, when they went through there were winds on the first, over 100 miles, very low knock. And, you know, I've done very little firefighting. You get in a situation like that, mainly you just have to get it out. Because
I can tell you that as a fire manager for like 15 years in my early career, blueberries will definitely work.
They will.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. If you have drying conditions, they're irritations from fire.
But even if there's virtually no vegetation besides the blueberries in the ground.
I mean, if it's dirt, it might not carry. But yeah, you always have to have something, some kind of ground fuels to carry it to the next thing. But yeah, I mean, if there's grass there and in a drought period, those shrubs will grow.
What about the rain?
I think like the point he made about if you have very little vegetation underneath, it just makes all the difference in whether it's going to carry. I don't think grapes carry as well.
Which is not to say don't have cover crops. Please don't take that.
Question for George and your windrows, your hedgerows. You seen western meadowlark?
Have not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up starting in the 60s, the farmers started taking out hedgerows, fence rows, and that was the habitat in the valley. There were a lot of habitat. Western meadowlark and like China pheasants, a whole lot of small birds and so on. So seeing that come back, you know, that kind of habitat come back, to me, it's going to be a whole lot better.
Yeah, I know the meadowlarks like open fields, maybe hedgerows, but around open fields, I'm not sure how they feel about
Yeah,
blueberry.
they need
It's really,
they open field, but they need the fence.
yeah.
Habitat as a fence row, the nest perch.
So maybe a hedgerow that's not right by a big blueberry planting would maybe be attractive better.
The old ones were pretty tall. They were hanging anywhere from high brush to actual trees.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say that thank you for your experimentation and getting native plants out there for the pollinator population. What happens that I see is those kind of things catch on and those kind of Eden and Sarah and Mark, the practitioners who have dogged the work to improve your properties, to believe that things can change. I'm just the idea person that shows up and says, hey, you do this, you have money for them. But they put it to test and they make it happen. And their tenacity and resilience and patience with the federal government delivery system is just been a joy to work with and what you presented here today, really everyone within.
Well, my question for Eden, actually, could you speak to the specific flow? My husband and I manage with his sisters, 80 acres and household management. And we have there's some position. Really not with so she see to the challenges which you encounter. Managing a property as a family and maybe some conversations that she wish she had with at the
Yeah. So we've actually taken a step out. We were sort of moving forward in maybe an unhealthy manner. We actually took a step back and reevaluated roles, and we're actually in the process of sort of re-envisioning what the farm looks like. Because I think it's really important to openly communicate with what you're actually interested in doing and what you can sustain. I like, for example, one of my brothers, he is really interested in the farm and working on the farm, but turns out he doesn't want to run the show. And so now he's working under me seasonally on the farm, and because of a mistake in the farm, especially. But just talking, I guess, with family about what we're capable of doing and what we want to do, and also another sibling not wanting to participate and being open to the fact, you know, I think I am not a good, we are learning, and I think we're not necessarily a great example of how things. No one, succession planning is so hard to know example is the right way, but I mean, I went to a panel where it's, I mean, it's a conversation that's being had in many different forums right now, because I think that, you know, farmers are getting older and younger generations don't want to take that over into this conversation. Not done it historically in a healthy manner with my extended family, and so we're trying really hard now as an immediate family to take ownership of that. So, I mean, really, you're truly having weekly meetings to talk about those roles and figure out for community. So, there are resources in the community, and one of them is around, which is only with planning, training, and also old time.
Yeah, we have.
So those are two places you can go with people who give them a lot of it, because it is, you know, the nicest community. We did that in our family, and it was a very convoluted contract. There was a duel, so you could get really creative on these contracts to get everybody what they need.
We talk about contracts, like it feels weird sometimes with family, but and for it works.
Question right here?
Yeah, interesting. You go to fair in the point when you get to select areas. And what? Well, what? Trying to my code that they were always like the weeds, not stem. I don't know if you have any way of making of those weeds stem.
So if you leave them in an area long enough, they'll maybe be 2 or 3 feet off the end, and they won't eat the old cane. So you actually have to come back with a brush hog or board mulcher or cut it down and get rid of it. So, but then the little stuff will come up. and you put the ghost back on that, they clean it out. And you just do that over 2 or 3 years, different season, blackberry's gone.
Yeah.
I'm actually running out of blackberry.
Yeah.
If you're gonna use those as like a biological birth control, they don't get enough nutrients out of the long stem. So you really do have to mow it off. But at the time, you might also have to do, like, you don't have enough blackberries, you've got to put some rental feed out, just so that you're not like messing with the health. There.
Follow-up question for Mark. So you have a little farm ranch. What's your market for the percentage?
So this time of year, January, February, I take them to Eugene Livestock Auction, which corresponds to the Muslim holy holiday. And so if I were to sell them in, let's say, November, December, get $110, $150 an animal. If you sell them in February, you get $220. And so you have to carry them over long enough and deal with supplemental feed to get them.
For George, what are the species that you are using in the country?
Off the top of my head, we do a lot of spirea, Douglas spirea, willows, there's a large amount of space for it, ocean spray. Some of the ceanothus are really nice, but they're a little bit harder to get established. Sometimes we'll supplement irrigate, if we over irrigate. And then Pacific nine bark, not boring. Then the real workhorses are the Douglas aster and the goldenrod. They bloom from basically July until the frost. And then if we have larger plants, we'll put some big leaf maple or vine maple as well.
Building on that, I was curious about size and, kind of like width, and obviously I know what size of these plants are, but so how wide are you going to do hedgerows?
Oftentimes we have space, we'll try to do a double hedgerow. And so one hedgerow will be taller shrubs, and then we'll do one hedgerow that'll be a lot of perennials. Put that hedgerow on the south side. So it'll take up a total of probably 12, 15 feet. But you can do single hedgerows and keep them more narrow if you got equipment or you got to get through there, however you want. It's just we'll prune them back or hedge them back if we need to. It helps revitalize them. It's a nice new shoots, lots more flowers, and it just keeps them from getting in the way of equipment or shading out the blueberries.
And a related question to George or to others. So we're going to be talking about hedgerows and pollen, for pollinators. Sounds like a lot of these could be used in the riparian zone as well. So could you essentially, by using natives and using the right mix, create a streamside riparian buffer that is also pollinator?
Absolutely, yeah.
Hedgerows are super diverse. You can use them for like drip protection if you've got a lot of chemical drip coming over from another farm. We've got a couple of projects that are doing that right now. And then they're actually putting pollinator hedgerows in the middle of the field to help with flower pollination in a cut buffer. So super diverse.
Prior to Helen.
So about to geek out on hedgerows. Either side of my creek. For George, have you ever put coyote in your head?
Yes. Pretty good. Yeah, I have. The oldest we have is probably 4 years old. Coyote brush. It does really well. We did do some irrigation the first year or so, but then more irrigation after that. It does bloom late in fall time, winter. So it's a great plant. A lot of nurseries will sell both the male and female plants, and it's a really good plant. Yeah, one that we've Haven't used a lot of it, it's hard to get, it seems like, but it does, maybe it's established well.
If I could follow up on that, my experience with that was something like that. I had 80% mortality. I put 10 or 20% survive, the like rockets. They're getting food. And in terms of the source, I got mine from life cutters over on US 101.
Okay.
Out of the select area. If anybody wants life cutters. In fact, you're welcome to come out and help bring live.
Did you plan to drugs in 1 or 2 rows and then 4, or did you do 4?
Yeah, we'll do plugs usually, like deep cell plugs are 5.5 inches taller, so out of 50 or so, I think is what it is. Or you can buy them in a 3.5 inch pot, but the plugs do just fine.
Right.
It's kind of a two-part question. The first part, when you're dealing with like a well-established, like, say, huge brand low library, and you're going to start out years long more nutrition, like how long can you usually expect that to take? Now you start like a project in different years and has its shooting, like where it is managing the library.
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna do planting, you're gonna want to make sure you have all those blackberries taken care of, unless you're wanting to go out and spot spray them or weed wipe them with a herbicide. Otherwise, it's especially as those shrubs get thicker, there's blackberries that keep popping up, and you don't really see them until they're long. And we've done it before where we've gone and pulled the blackberries out and directly planted into the ground, but that did require spot spraying when the plants were young, and then going through and wiping herbicide on as the shrubs got bigger, so we weren't hurting the shrubs. If you're gonna use goats or something, you'd have to get them mowed back. So what, 2-3 years it took to get them wiped out or so. So it's whatever I guess you're willing to do. If you don't want to use herbicide, then you'd want to use goats or something to for those 2-3 years to get them completely taken care of, because the goats will feed on the shrubs as well. Many of the shrubs, so you don't want to be planting your habitat and then having goats at the same time.
Sue, and then Mike, and then I think we're gonna be. Oh, yeah. So Sue, I'm afraid about Hawthorne. I see a lot of red Hawthorne everywhere. Even considering about. And so, for a while, I thought, well, these are pretty good. And so, people had a lot of them was pretty bad. But now my Hawthorne, and I don't think it's good. So I had never, I guess, question to anybody. Have you anything going on? Because like I said, most of the hedgerows are part. I think the hedgerows all were, a lot of them gone in.
Well, I don't specifically know about Hunt, but I do know that the research at Oregon State shows one severe hot, dry year on Douglas fir trees will require 5 years of normal weather to recoup. Well, guess what? We haven't had 5 years of normal weather. So there's dieback in western red cedar. The tops are dying in entire trees. There's tops of big leaf maple trees are dying. And anybody has species out there, that's not the only thing dying. So I would have this on protecting the trees under this problem. So that's my guess. We a few years ago went back to 117 degrees in Monmouth and Dallas. That was 9 degrees above the old time treaty out there. Unprecedented without a doubt. So will that affect plants? Oh yeah. Severely.
Yeah, the extended dry period. The features long winter more, and so just look at tree density in the area that was there dying, that's probably pretty fast. And so the hedgerow, under together more than forest stand. Hey, Mike, and then we're gonna check to see, if you're going to Zoom. I have any questions.
Sure. Well, you're talking about water quality and landowners, for the most part, being unaware of the rules that they have with streaming water on their property. That's obviously concerning, maybe not surprising, considering what I see sometimes. You mentioned the example of working with the local soil and water district and going out there and helping them. That's great, but as far as educating them when they're buying the property or owning the property, I think you touched on that a little bit, that your efforts to educate people on their responsibilities or what they should be doing for if they have a stream or waterway or wetland on the property.
Yeah, mostly we've been noticing lately that there is that communication gap in the conservation entities throughout Oregon. And there's a lot of efforts. The soil health summit that they just held in Corvallis is trying to start, soil health education hubs. And ODA right now doesn't have that type of communication network, but it's something that we're creating a communications plan for our program, and hopefully we'll tie into some of those networks. And the biggest thing we've identified is there is a lack of connectivity between all of these different conservation entities. And the SWCDs, a couple of them in my region that I work with, they work with real estate agents and do provide new farm landowner packets of information. But sometimes, it's people that own the land, they have contract farmers, and it's contract farmers coming up from California or somewhere else, or farming somewhere for 2 years and then going somewhere else. And so it's a really complex issue with some simple solutions that we're just like really slowly implementing. But yeah, working with real estate, real estate agents is something that a lot of SWCDs have identified as a good way to get in contact with new landowners. I don't know what the avenue, like the line of communication to establish would be for contract farmers. But definitely working with the other conservation entities that are developing these huge communication and technical assistance networks throughout Oregon is something. So right now, part of our program, no, we don't have an inroad to be able to talk to new landowners in that way. But mostly we get our information out through our programs. So providing funding to SWCDs for like targeted areas for conservation restoration and coming into compliance with the ag water quality rules. And then local work group and meetings like this, where we're able to talk about what the rules are, what the issues are, and talk about particularly interesting compliance case studies is usually a fun way that people like hearing about it. So
Yeah, it's like a big opportunity there. Like Kevin mentioned early on, that we're the soil water district's non-regulatory, but as far as education.
One of the things that is happening is we have a couple of folks that are actually presenting at a small farm conference, specifically about what are all the rules out there, what are the age rules, what are EQ rules, what are how we navigate all of that. Actually hiring someone to specifically focus on.
Any questions on Zoom? I have a handout or?
No, I don't see any questions in the chat, or nobody has their hand up. Last chance for any questions. People on Zoom.
Okay.
Seems like nobody's.
Well, then I want to thank the panelists very much for doing joining us. The takeaway kind of thing is just, bringing those communities together, like communities that name the organizations that help, the water, the landowners, it all makes difference. And I know that I came to the county with no farm experience, I was a lot like smart. I know, Evelyn, you're laughing at that, but, it has been a full-time job. Taking care of land is a full-time job, and you can't do like, you need help, and there's a lot of help. We just have to get everybody on the same page. So thank you very much for all your good questions.
Okay.
And now, Morgan, would you like to introduce the booth?
Oh, I'm not quite to the food yet. I am gonna speak for a second, who's very tech savvy and helps us out with putting together a survey, just to check in with you about your natural resource concerns and how we can help. So I'll let Eve elaborate.
Awesome. Yeah, we're gonna be doing a like live survey poll type of situation. If you guys do not want to participate with your mobile phones, there are paper copies of the exact same survey on that desk with the paper, the clipboards. This is just to get an idea of what areas different conservation or resource concerns are in and the response to today's panel discussions and your ideas about what we can do to address the different resource concerns in areas of Polk County. So this first question is just about what district you live or work in. I'm going to allow a good minute and a half for responses. And again, if you can't get the live poll to work, there are paper copies. So your responses will be recorded.
That's a free app.
Yeah, or well, part of the program is free, but it's just a website. You can just go slido.com and then enter this code right here. Yeah. Ooh, large representation from zone 4. There are more zones.
Hey, Eve, can you drop that code in the chat?
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought I was still sharing.
Well, I see some computer screen, but I don't see the code up there.
Okay. Yeah, where do you okay, for people on Zoom, I can't seem to reopen the Zoom window. So
Only like you could talk after.
yeah, it's not popping up, but
1079
305 1079 at slido.com for the people on Zoom.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go on to the next question. The past local work group meetings identified our top 3 priority resource concerns as water quality, soil health, and wildlife habitat. Do you agree with this priority ranking? Yes or no? No. Okay, it seems like most everybody's got their responses in, so we're going to move on to the next question. If you disagree with last year's priority ranking, please rank the top 3 resource concerns in Polk County. You don't need to order all of them, just your top 3, and that's the one we will use. Okay, almost everybody has their responses in. Anybody waiting? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question. And these next questions are gonna be specifically about the resource concerns we identified last year. So water quality, wildlife habitat, and soil health. Here are some different factors that can decrease water quality. Please rank them from the most impactful based on your experience to the least impactful. Okay, we have about 18 responses in. Is anybody still responding? Okay, move on to the next question. And same style, what factors from your perspective are decreasing the soil health of Polk County? Okay, got quickly came in. Okay, looks like we have everybody's responses in. Bare soil accessible surface, low organic matter. Adds up to what we have discussed today. And then what factors in decrease wildlife habitats? Okay, looks like we got everybody's answers in. Looks like we got a couple tied, lack of travel corridors. Oh, no one. Okay, moving along, only two more questions. Bear with me, guys. So we'll move on to management practices. So based on like all the different management strategies you've heard today, or just your experience, could you please rank these management practice on most to least effective, addressing general resource concerns or specific resource concerns on croplands? Okay, looks like we have everybody's responses in. Same question, but on management practices addressing resource concerns on forest land. Looks like we have everybody's responses in. One final question, what support would help you all implement the presented strategies on the land you manage? And again, it just needs to be the top three, but you're welcome to rank all. And that is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for participating in the survey. This data will help us better learn how to support you and reach out to specific issues throughout Polk County. So, thank you.
Yeah, maybe next year we should play some bats. That was kind of fun watching.
Thank you for taking my call.
What do we have, Lauren?
They call that line, a very specific whole kind of version. The also video, they did report on all that are being done today. They're going to a municipal board. All right, one of our logo have perfect for the event. That we have to get. And there's we have got one of the large, the polymer line, the hospital already here. And going to either this. On, there's walk. Or we have a couple of longer, they call all right, and we have 3 pieces here, and 4 pieces here, and we have 4 tickets in. Everyone will be happy. But that would be, say, George Kaufman, say, Kira Tyson, and her, what the board, reading, I'm sorry, I'm I'll add it in the one here, so they're.
Yeah. Yeah, we're okay with that.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of quick plugs for some upcoming events. We're doing a bird box install at Cornerstone, next, well, not quite February, yeah, in March. March is also Winter Wildlife Field Day. There are 3 field stations around the whole county. One over here at the park, one at Riverview, Independence, and baskets with them. So stay tuned for details on that. March. We're working with George and Anthony Melanthopoulos. He organizes the Oregon Bee Project to do a kind of a tour. So that will be May 22nd. And then we're going to be working with the city of Dallas to do an EAB Emerald Ash Borer workshop with so stay tuned for details on those things. Just huge thank you to our panelists, to everyone that came. Thank you to the folks on Zoom. We're happy you're here. I want to invite you to have some food. Thank you to Eden and Lindsay and Pro Supper Club. I hope you enjoy. And we need to be outside.
Return that. I'm driving to bed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good.